Welcome to Paradelphia Radio. This is Rick Pruitt once again here in the Wildfire Studios, and we are going to be bringing you once again the best damn paranormal talk here in the Delaware Valley.
In the universe.
Or the universe.
Yeah, see?
And or the universe.
I'm extending us out there.
There you go. That obviously is my co-host, Mr. Doug Hogate.
Of course.
We are also here with Miss Melly DeVault.
I like racy pieces.
Okay, E.T.
Oh, yeah, didn't think about that. All right.
Hey, he was my favorite.
Yeah, I'm dating myself. That's right. That's
Good job.
All right, so tonight we are going to have a interesting show. This past weekend, Doug and I did an interview with a lady by the name of Stasha Eriksen, and we actually had her on the show over the fall or last fall, around November-ish.
Yep.
And she has written a book about the Mandela effect. For anybody unfamiliar, that is the effect we talk about pretty frequently on the show. Whereas things seem to have changed a bit over the years. People remembering things differently than they appear now. People who have died that have not died. People that have not died that have died. Little quirks with names of books and songs and little pop culture references, things like that.
It's literally everything you can think of. I mean, like you just said, whether it's music or movies or people, like there's something that has to do, like, somewhere down the line of the Mandela effect involving it. Like, it blows your mind.
You know who would appreciate some of this stuff?
What's that? Who's that?
The group that just left here, the party nerds.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Especially the movie stuff and the pop culture stuff. They probably would appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I know, like, before we even started discussing it, like, the first show we had talking about it, you know, I think that the Mandela effect was just one of the things we were discussing on that show, and it ended up taking over because there's so much. And as we'll learn, obviously, later on in the show with talking to Stasha, every time you turn around, there's something new.
Right.
It's not just something that, it used to be.
Well, there's one, speaking of something new, there's one that I just saw today that we didn't even get this into the interview because I hadn't even seen it. I don't think Stasha's seen it either because she would have probably mentioned it. You know how last week Billy Graham died, right?
Yeah.
So we think.
Okay.
But apparently there are people that remember him dying and remember his funeral being on TV.
Here we go.
Years ago.
Oh, wow.
I saw this one today.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say, that's something, pretty big that she would have probably mentioned, but
yeah.
That's insane.
So that there's people out there that recall this being like broadcast on TV, seeing this big elaborate production made of his funeral and so forth and so on. I'm not sure what year they thought it was, but it was obviously not in the last week. It was years ago.
Sure, right.
So
it's you wonder how many times did they just throw a funeral for someone just automatically, and meanwhile they're watching their own funeral on TV.
Throw a fake funeral.
Yeah, exactly.
Throw people off the scent.
Right.
Yeah. So that's going to be our bulk of our show here. We're going to have an interview that's going to last a little over an hour. So that's going to take up a good portion of the evening. But because we have a little bit of short time here in the front half of the show, why don't we jump right into some para news?
Sounds good.
All right, so because we have a extended long interview with Stasha Eriksen today, let's break here.
Oh, okay.
And when we come back on the flip side, we will intro our talk about the Mandela effect.
Hot damn.
Back in a few. All right, we are back here on Paradelphia on Wildfire Radio. And right now we are going to go to our interview that we did with a lady by the name of Stasha Eriksen. Again, we talked to Stasha in the fall, right around November-ish, about the Mandela effect. And her book is called The Mandela Effect, Everything is Changing. We'll talk about, in the interview, we'll talk about how to go about getting that book and so forth. But again, it's interesting stuff. She's got some new effects, I guess, new instances of the Mandela effect.
Just from this year, and we're only, coming up in our third month of the year, so.
And we kind of get into a little bit into the what we call the weed talk. we go a little deep here with some of the topics when we dig into the potential reasons behind the Mandela effect. So it gets interesting. So it should be a fun interview.
Oh yeah, and she's great too. And not only that, she's calling herself was from Norway. And I think when we did the interview, it was around 11 o'clock on Sunday. It was 5 p.m. and like 20 below or something.
Yeah, she said it was like 20 below zero.
Yeah, so definitely good stuff.
All right, so we're going to throw it to the interview now, and we will come back at the end, and we'll discuss a bit.
Alrighty.
All right.
All right, joining us today on Paradelphia is Stasha Eriksen, and if that name sounds familiar, then good on you. You've been listening to the show. We had Stasha on back in, I believe it was November, to talk about the Mandela effect, and at the time, we discussed possibly having her back on, and unfortunately, the holidays and whatnot got in the way. It's been a few months, but we are happy to have her back on our airwaves tonight. Stasha is, again, to recap here, she's an author, she's a researcher, a spiritual teacher, a biblical scholar that lives in both Hollywood, California, and up in Norway part of the year. She has written many books over the years on spiritual teachings and biblical topics, and also some conspiracy theory-natured books, which is what we're going to get into tonight with the topic of the Mandela effect. So, Stasha, welcome back to Paradelphia.
Thanks so much, Rick. It's lovely to be back again, and I had such a great time last time on the show, and I got a lot of emails from some of your listeners and a lot of support and a lot of questions, so I thought it was important now that the holidays were over and things were back to normal that I come on and kind of address some of the old effects people had questions about and talk about some new ones that have popped up already in 2018.
Yeah, that's we talked a few minutes ago about the new effects, and you said there's quite a few. I'm sorry. Also joining us today, my co-host, Mr. Doug Hogate, is here with us.
Hey, everyone knows I'm always with you, Rick.
Doug's always floating around. He's like that ghost. He's like Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder. He's just kind of there.
Exactly.
Well, I'm glad you're here too, Doug. Nice to talk to you as well.
Yes, you too. I've been excited about this, and like you said before we got started, I can't believe there's more and there's new ones. So this is going to be something else.
Yeah. So now to kind of bring everybody up to speed real quick with all this, if anyone doesn't know what the Mandela effect is and they're listening to a show on the topic for the first time, Stasha, can you give a quick overview on what exactly it is you're talking about?
Of course. Well, the Mandela effect is actually the term that is known for a phenomenon that is proof that reality as we know it is changing. And basically this can be seen in many different examples, from pop culture to movies, television, the spelling of people's names, people who many people believe that were dead are now alive again or have died more than once or twice. And they just call it the Mandela effect because it started with a paranormal researcher by the name of Fiona Broome. And she had this very vivid memory of Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. And then later on down the line, she saw that he had died again in 2013. And this just absolutely blew her mind. So she kind of started a little blog and asked people, does anybody else remember Nelson Mandela dying in the 80s? And her blog had so many responses that it basically kind of grew its own legs and turned into this huge phenomenon. So it maybe started with, somebody misremembering a death or remembering a death happening one way or the other, but it spread to everything to biblical verses changing, to iconic scenes from Star Wars and major pop culture memories everybody has, that many of the things as they are today are not as we remembered them, let's say 10 years ago, 5 years ago, etc. So it's really hard to put your finger on what exactly is causing it and what exactly this is, but it essentially is a symptom that reality as we know it is changing.
Right. And some of the best-known ones we've talked about in the last interview was obviously the one everybody talks about, is besides the Mandela, is the Bernstein Bears, the spelling of the Bernstein Bears being with an A instead of an EI or IE.
Yeah, that one's probably the most popular. And one thing I thought was a little strange was I was listening back to our last interview, and you mentioned something and said, oh, you mean they added an AI to Stain instead of a Berenstein with an EI? And then I had a lot of people make comments on my YouTube channel because I mirrored the interview, and many people said, hey, that guy said they added AI. I wonder if AI has something to do with it.
Oh, yeah.
So quite a few people commented on that interview saying that's kind of strange that it used to be EI and now they added an AI. So a lot of people thought maybe AI had something to do with this after they heard our interview.
We're creating our own. See that?
See?
It's interesting because one of the things that I wanted to get into, and I want you have a whole bunch of new ones here you're going to get into in the interview today. But Doug mentioned something that I was going to bring up, and we'll segue into it now, just getting into your new stories. He mentioned, are we creating new ones? And that, to me, is a very interesting question because it has been proven now, scientifically, that we literally create reality. We've had tests done where we have seen that photons are changing based on whether they are or are not observed. And so if you take that and you extrapolate that over the larger picture, we are literally creating the reality we see. So is it possible that what's going on here is kind of a large-scale Schrodinger's cat experiment, whereas we say that this happens, that this changed, this person died in 1984 as opposed to 2013 or whatever it might be. And if you say it enough and enough people hear it and they start to think about it and believe it, does it make it so?
Well, that is a really great question, and I think you're absolutely onto something with that because like Doug was mentioning, when the Mandela effect first came out, there was maybe like a handful of Mandela effects, 10, 20, 30, maybe even up to 100. But now, since this topic has begun trending, I literally can't keep up. I think I saw this list of 2018 effects that were like over 700 changes. Wow. And now in 2018, we've got over 200, I think, and it's only February.
Wow.
So I believe maybe the more of us that are aware of it and the more of us that are focusing on it, we could be changing the reality now ourselves. It might have started with one little tear in the sweater, and now it's just unraveling, exponentially because the more people that observe it and that are aware of it, we could very well be changing things. So that could be a really good thing too. It doesn't have to be anything scary.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Obviously, you can look at it one of two ways. Either you can change it in a bad way, or you can change it in a good way.
Yes.
But I guess the thing that would tip that scale is people would have to believe in what they were doing. It couldn't be by accident. It couldn't just be because a few people believed in it. It would have to be like a wholesale effort, so to speak. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and thanks to the internet, we have that, because when one or two people Google something, then a million other people Google it, and then everybody's coming together going, oh, hey, yeah, I remember that too,
Right.
It's been messing with my memory, a little bit, because it's been 2.5 years I've studied this now, and the more I kind of see things, then I can sometimes even go, oh, wait, am I misremembering? Because it really will start to mess with you a little bit, especially the more you observe it. You almost can't remember how things were in the beginning. So that's why I had to write this book to begin with, was so that we could write down and record all of our memories before things continued to change even more, and we forgot how things were.
Right. So I mentioned to you I was going to kind of let you drive the car this week. So you have a whole bunch of new information for us. So I'm curious to hear what's happened since last we spoke.
Okay. Well, a lot has really come up. At least with the last interview, I had so much feedback on the Jif versus Jiffy peanut butter. That one, everybody went crazy about that one.
I'm sure grocery stores went nuts after that one too. Everybody just showing up for it.
Oh yeah, and in my book, I actually contacted Jif themselves, and I got a letter back from them, and I called them out on it, and they had this really weird response, and it seemed very pre-planned and pre-recorded, as if hundreds or thousands of people had already asked them about Jiffy. They had already had this pre-recorded response that just shut me down. So yeah, that was pretty crazy. And the Lord's Prayer, many people contacted me about that one changing. All the maps changing. We have Zealandia, this new continent, and all these other things. So I got a lot of feedback on that, and especially on the Star Wars stuff. People could not believe that C-3PO had a silver leg. I mean, people are still freaking out about this.
And I have a point on that.
Yeah.
On Netflix, there's a series that has, I think it was 4 or 5 episodes. I think it's called something like The Toys That Changed Us or something. And it's a really cool show. It's basically every show is dedicated to a toy that was like a staple toy of our childhood from like 30 or 40 years ago. They did like Barbie dolls, and they did G.I. Joe, and they did things like that. One of the toys that they talked about were the Star Wars toys, the popularity of the figures back in the late 70s after Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
And in that show, they showed the old figures, people, collectors and whatnot that had them. And so they showed them on the show.
Yeah.
And damn if CPO's leg wasn't completely gold. And I at one point I stopped the video. And my fiance was sitting with me, and I said, hang on, let me go back a second. And she's like, what are you talking about? I went back, and I rewound like 10 or 20 seconds, and I stopped it on a video shot of like a collector's table or whatever. I said, look at that right there. It's from the 1970s, that piece. And I said, it's a gold, or I'm sorry, it's a one-colored leg. It's not a two-tone leg.
Yeah. Oh my God, I do that kind of stuff all the time, and I have to take screenshots with my phone.
Yeah, just to be able to prove it,
Wait a minute, yeah. And that's kind of what we call residual evidence. That's where we go and we try to find things how we remember them, take a photo, draw the picture or whatever. And that happens to me a lot. So that's really great, because those collector guys, you cannot mess with a toy collector, especially not a Star Wars toy collector. So I really trust those guys. So I actually saw that trending on Netflix. I'm going to have to check that series out and find a screenshot and take that for you, because that really, that one had a lot of feedback for people too. So I'm glad you saw that. It's definitely sprinkles of the way things were out there for sure.
Right.
And the Luke, I am your father, on the same token, I had so many people freaking out about that one. Just like, come on. Of course he said, Luke, I'm your father. Or We Are the Champions. I've had so many people playing that song back and going, where did the end go? And Mona Lisa Smiling Now is freaking everybody out. So those are some of the ones that I was commenting last time that got a lot of good feedback. But I do have some new ones here. So should I kind of tell you guys about some of these new ones?
I'm all excited about this.
Okay, now one of the first ones, this one is, it's hard to say whether this is a Mandela effect or not, but a lot of people are noticing that many of the logos and names that we find for businesses, companies, electronics companies, whatever, that they have now started to change all of the letter A's into these upside down V's. Now, if you guys look like on your Samsung device, that's one of the best places to see it. That the letter A, almost anything that has to do with technology, basically, is now changed in every logo from a letter A to an upside down V. So there's a lot of people wondering what the heck that is about, because there's a lot of spiritual meaning about the letter V, and it has to do with that we're now coming into what's known as the fifth age of humanity. And that's supposed to be kind of not a good time. The fifth age is supposed to be kind of, if you will, the time of Satan taking over the world. So that's been really freaking a lot of people out. And it's like on every logo, though. I mean, it's not just Samsung. That's just the most common example. But if people start paying attention now, start looking at how many letter A's are missing and how many have been replaced with V's. So there's a lot of people that can remember logos the way they were before and saying that was definitely an A. And you look, and it's all an upside-down V. So
I see what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
See what I mean? And it's not just Samsung. It's like almost everything that I see now on television that's for a product or a company, they've gotten rid of the A. So I don't know what that's about or why it's an upside-down V. But a lot of people are showing like before and afters of certain logos where it was an A, and now it's this upside-down V. So we're not sure if that's a Mandela effect or if this is some type of pre-programmed agenda thing. There's a lot to do with numbers, letters, and symbolism. It's kind of like witchcraft in a way. So there's a lot of people trying to figure out what that's about. So that was one of the first trending topics that came up. So everybody can check their devices and see if all their A's are gone.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, wow.
Very weird. Okay, now we'll get more into some Mandela effects that are kind of pop culture here. Now, this one is freaking everybody out. Now, we all know the movie The Matrix, right?
Uh-huh.
One of the most famous, especially for conspiracy people. And in The Matrix, one of the most iconic sayings that Morpheus said to Neo when he's sitting down with him, and he's got the red pill and the blue pill, and he basically tells him, "What if I told you that everything you knew was a lie?" Now, this is mostly what everybody remembers that scene being, and before he sits down and says, you can choose. Do you want to know the truth or do you want to look away? And now, and you could even look on the internet. There's like a million of these memes of Morpheus, like with "What if I told you?" and then they'll have some funny meme at the end of it. Mm-hmm. But now, when you watch back the movie, he does not say anything like that at all. And not through the entire movie is there a moment where Morpheus ever says, "What if I told you that everything you knew was a lie?" So there's some really crazy Matrix fans out there going, what happened to this scene? That's kind of the whole point of him sitting down with this red pill, blue pill, is to say, do you want to know the truth about everything?
Right.
So that line is now missing. So I'm sure a lot of people that listen to the show know The Matrix, and they will probably remember that iconic line. And it's not like it's been changed or altered. It's just gone.
Wow.
The whole line. So the scene almost seems out of context now.
Yeah, I remember the scene. I don't know The Matrix as well enough to be able to absolutely remember that particular line, but I do remember the scene. They're in like the study, and he's sitting in the two big chairs facing each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm not the biggest Matrix fan either. I mean, I've seen it. So that one, I just remember that being a very popular line. I mean, like every movie kind of has these popular lines that come out of it. And that's basically the most popular Matrix line. So it's just missing. So that's freaking a lot of people out. But I've got another one from a movie. Now, this one just blowing my mind. It's too funny. And I had to watch back the original film a couple times to make sure this was correct. So we all remember Crocodile Dundee, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, the most iconic scene or line from Crocodile Dundee is when he's got this knife and he's talking to the guy and he says, "That's not a knife. This is a knife." Right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right.
You guys probably remember that, right? That's not a knife. This is a knife.
Right.
Well, now when you watch it back, he goes, "That's not a knife. That's a knife." And that's it. So there's no more, "That's not a knife, this is a knife." He just pulls out his knife and says, "That's not a knife, that's a knife." Mm-hmm. And he has no delivery. His tone changes in the film. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't even make sense.
Huh.
Wow, really? So it's just the fact that it just changing a word completely changes the context of it altogether. And,
exactly.
Right.
I hear something like that, and that was kind of a I don't even know what you would call it. Kind of like a quote. You know how when you're younger you tend to quote movies to your friends all the time, and it's just kind of like the Luke, I'm your father thing. It's just you put it in different contexts during your life, and it's just meant to be funny or ironic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that line is one of those lines. I remember growing up, randomly just kind of like throwing that out there in various contexts, to make people laugh or just to be ironic or whatever.
It's like quoting. It's like when you quote movies, like you do it often, or I mean, if you have that personality, so to speak.
So with something like that, or with the Luke and your father thing, it's I hear this and I think, well, either the world is got it wrong. Or something happening. Like, it isn't just one or two people saying this. It wasn't just my group of friends that were hanging out saying this quote back and forth to each other. This is the world at large that did this. You know? So it's not just that we got it wrong. We watched the movie and maybe we in our little circle of friends were quoting the movie wrong. Mm-hmm. It was the whole world doing it.
Right. And I know what you mean. It's kind of like a meme, too. You can look up "That's Not a Knife" memes, and it'll be like, "That's not a knife. This is a blank," and they'll just put random funny jokes at the end of that. But it'd always be like, "That's not that. This is that." And it's because he's trying to show the difference of this guy having a small knife and him having a big knife. So just small things like that are driving people really crazy because, like you said, it's not like everybody in the world got it wrong. That doesn't make sense. How could we all be going around quoting things wrong all of our lives? It just doesn't even make sense.
Right, right.
So that's why I give credibility to this topic, and I have to assume that there's something quantum going on or something nefarious going on or something, parallel reality going on, because why would we all get it wrong? It doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
Okay, I've got another one here that isn't a pop culture one, but it's one that is to do with the art world, or the world of the arts and sculpture. This one's been pretty popular as a Mandela effect, and people have talked about the famous statue. There's this famous bronze sculpture statue by a guy called Auguste Rodin, and his statue is known as the Thinker. And I'm sure you guys probably know what I'm talking about. It's like a guy sitting down and he's thinking, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, most people remember the Thinker sitting there with, he's kind of sitting down and he's got his elbow on his knee, and then he's got his fist kind of on his head as if he's really thinking super hard.
Like on his chin, right?
Well, on his forehead is what many people remembered before, that he had it kind of on his forehead looking down, almost like he was downtrodden. But now, like you just said about the chin, the new statue, or the statue as it is today, he has his fist underneath his chin.
Huh.
So you remembered the chin,
Yeah.
but some people remember the forehead. But there's a lot of people who have done these artistic representations, like tried to recopy or draw this statue. And on the internet, you will find there are thousands of people who have done a sketch of this sculpture prior to Mandela effect, and their artist representation of the sculpture has his fist on his forehead.
Huh.
Wow.
So I don't know how a bronze sculpture changes, but many people are freaking out about that one, because the statue, of course, is the way it is now with a fist under his chin. But if you're looking all over the internet, there's all these people who are artists that have gone in person and sat and drawn it, sat there at a bench and did their own representation. So that's kind of the only residual evidence we've been able to find are people how they remember drawing it. So there may be some mixed reviews on that one, but yeah, now his statue's on his chin, and no longer, he's not really thinking anymore. He's kind of got his just hand on his chin. So that's another one that changed.
Interesting.
And now this other one here is a little bit crazy, and there's been a huge debate about it, and it is about the order of the traffic light colors, when you're driving red, yellow, green. Mm-hmm. And most people, or how it is today, is it's red, yellow, green, with red on the top, yellow in the middle, green on the bottom. But there's millions of people now saying that it used to be the opposite, that it was always green on the top, yellow in the middle, and red on the bottom.
Huh.
Really?
Wow.
That one I don't ever remember. Yeah.
Right.
Now, and when I first say it right off the top of my head, I go red, yellow, green. That sounds to me like the most common way to put it. But
Right.
there are millions and millions of people saying, no, red was always on the top so that you would stop and then slow down and then go. So that's another really big debate going on there. Now, for me, I remember it red, yellow, green as it is now. But that's kind of how these Mandela effects work. It's like I don't necessarily agree with every single one that comes up. But when I do the research and there's thousands or millions of people remembering it the other way, then I start getting really interested. It's like, okay,
Right.
Wow, these traffic lights are kind of a big deal.
Well, it's interesting that, this isn't just across the board. In other words, like I'm sitting here hearing some of these, and I agree with some of them, and I don't agree with others. And I'm sure most people are like that. So it isn't just that everything changed. It's that certain things changed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's kind of weird, too.
And that's the whole thing about where a lot of people believe this might have something to do with quantum entanglement or parallel realities, because like we were talking about earlier about atoms and things being, observed or whatever. If let's say an atom is destroyed, and when it's destroyed, I believe its automatic reaction is kind of to pull the most parallel particle to itself, kind of into that dimension that it's been destroyed from. I'm not a scientist, so it's hard for me to explain this, but this could basically be, if something gets affected on one particular particle that is connected to a parallel reality, and that thing gets destroyed, well, it might pull the most common particle into our reality to replace what was destroyed. So this is why certain small things may be affected, but other things may not be. We may just be seeing sprinkles of residue of this parallel reality kind of slowly bleeding into ours.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people are thinking could be what's going on here.
Well, I have a question for you, and this is going to be, our old host, Toxic Radio, had a guy that ran the radio station named Mike Francolino, and he used to call our show, what do you call it, Doug? The weed talk or something?
Like, he basically said that all of our discussions is things that people discuss when they're smoking weed.
Because basically we would get into these topics that were just, you had to your mind had to reel to even consider them. And this question's going to be kind of like that. Okay. I don't know if you're familiar with Dave Paulides' Missing 411 books. You know about them?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Basically, what this is Dave Paulides is an author. I believe he's ex-FBI, I think it is. And he has this series of books where he literally documents thousands of cases of people going missing, just flat out going missing. And I don't mean like abduction cases necessarily. I mean people that are, say, on a camping trip, and they go over, they're walking in front of a group of people, they go out of sight for 5 seconds and they disappear. And they find that, and maybe they don't find these people at all, or they'll find them in crazy situations where they're miles away on top of a hill with their shoes off and their clothes folded next to them. Like, it's these bizarre things that happen to these people. And there's, on top of that, we've done interviews with a lady by the name of Varla Ventura, who's written a bunch of books on a bunch of different topics. One of them most recently is trolls, fairies, that kind of thing. Okay. And one of the cliches when it comes to the legends of trolls and fairies is that they will literally take you into their world, into their realm, so to speak. And you'll be gone for, in this world, 10 or 15 minutes. But you'll show back up again with, 10 days' growth of a beard. Like you've been gone for a week and a half or something along those lines. Yeah. So with that as a basis, when we look at this Mandela effect thing, we're kind of looking at it like the world is shifting, like something like CERN did something where the whole world is kind of affected. Yeah. But is it possible? Is it possible to go the other way with it and say that you, me, someone else could at some point, literally without knowing it, step through into another reality? And therefore you are just living your life. But all of a sudden, these little weird things, the Mandela effect things, are changing. But you don't realize that it's because you have literally stepped from one room to the other. And I'll take it a step further.
This is great. I love where you're going with this. Continue.
When these people disappear, okay, is it possible that they disappear and there are all these people looking for them and so forth and so on in their own reality, and they are completely oblivious to that fact because they have stepped into the next room? So you are literally living your life and you have no idea of any difference other than these little tic-tacky things, but somewhere else in your other room, your last room that you aren't even aware you left, there's a massive manhunt going on for you because you just dropped off the face of the earth.
Oh, wow. Well, that is a really good question. And those books sound really interesting, so I have to check those out now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, what you just said is 100% really connected to the parallel reality theory. And this is, I myself have actually wondered sometimes if I have done what you just said. If I have, through all my research and many years of meditation and spirituality, and I've been kind of on the spiritual path a really long time now. I felt myself, and this is my first book that I wrote, Diary of an Asset, has some stories about this, where I felt that I had maybe possibly slipped into a different reality where everything kind of looked the same. I remember the day it happened. I was in my apartment. I was on the internet and everything was normal, and then suddenly everything shifted. I had a television playing in the background and a kind of a family show. Suddenly the people on the show were like using curse words and really weird stuff like that, like a family Disney show.
Opposite of what you're used to.
Yes, and I thought I was going crazy or losing my mind at the time. And again, I was meditating a lot, maybe too much. I used to be kind of more new age and was just overdoing the whole meditation and, ascension and all that stuff. But I really did feel like suddenly something shifted. I was looking on my computer. I was on a web page, and then I realized all of the spelling and like grammar and everything was really off. Like periods were in the wrong places, commas were in the wrong place, apostrophe, really weird stuff. And I'm sitting there like, what the heck am I looking at here? Where am I? And I remember thinking like, where am I? So I wonder if some of us, especially people who are very open spiritually or psychically, if we are kind of like walking portals. Because aren't we just big antennas kind of magnetic energy and electromagnetic frequency? Could we not, if we focused enough, just, even create and put ourselves into another reality? Absolutely. And that very well could be what's happening. And there's another researcher, he calls himself SMQAI, and he wrote a book about Mandela effect as well. But his whole theory is that we did die in 2012, like that our whole planet was actually an extinction level event apparently happened in 2012. But we'll call them the benevolent aliens, saw this coming, and they kind of took all of our memories, all of our consciousness, and they kind of copied a reality and transferred our consciousness to this reality so that we never had to cease to exist.
So we're like a backup copy.
Right.
Yes. And I think you even mentioned that last time about the Bruce Willis movie with the avatars and all that.
Yeah.
So that could be what's going on. I'm very open-minded. I definitely am not a know-it-all, but I am open to say that anything is possible. So I believe some of us may have shifted into a parallel reality because our old Earth was destroyed, or everybody did, and what we're seeing is a copy of the Earth as we once knew it, and they couldn't exactly maybe get every little thing right when they copied it. So there's a lot of these little things that aren't 100% the way we remember it, but our consciousness and our soul are here going, hey, I remember it like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a very good possibility that, I lived in Ireland. I know all about fairies. Those things are real. I live in Norway now. This is Troll Valley. This is where all the trolls kind of stem out of Norway. So all this stuff is based on some kind of facts. I believe that.
Well,
so we could definitely be going through that right now. We might all be on a parallel reality.
right. Well, and another thing that comes to mind, too, the past... I know we discussed it just this past week briefly, and I mentioned it even the week before that. Is we one of the theories we've talked about is when you have these sightings of UFOs and extraterrestrials, and what if it's not really beings from another planet at all? What if it's actually us thousands and thousands of years into the future, where we've just evolved into what the typical gray looks like? It's just what we've evolved in at that time, and simply what we're seeing is us time traveling back in time, as Rick calls it, the ultimate historic field trip to actually go back in time and relive it. So with that being said, I know I did a story on our Para News segment last week about this guy who took a polygraph and claims that he's from the future and things like that. One of the things that comes to mind, what if like this whole Mandela effect is, what if you have like these select few people that do travel in time, and they don't want to cause too much of a ruckus to change history completely, but doing little tiny things like changing something simple as the name of the Bernstein Bears or something, just to kind of confuse us, as like a little joke. And then all of a sudden to where we're like, wait a minute, what wasn't it just yesterday it was this, and now all of a sudden it changed, and it's just like a big practical joke from time travelers. It's just us from thousands of years saying, hey, let's screw with us.
Or maybe it's a marker. Maybe it's
marker.
When you're going through a book and you mark a page, maybe they're marking the page of reality number 52.
Sure.
Oh, that's the one with Bernstein Bears with an A. Marker right there.
Mm-hmm. So it's.
I was thinking the same thing, or it could be a marker, like a way for them to know, like, hey, I was here, like a tagger, like someone doing graffiti, like, hey, I was here. My little thing that I'll change is the Berenstain Bears, or my little thing that I change is interview with a vampire. Like, that's another one everyone remembered, interview with the vampire, and now it's interview with a vampire, like whatever, small things like that. Like, that's my stamp. So absolutely, I think human beings are so much more capable than we realize, and I wouldn't put anything past humanity.
Wow. So the main reason behind people being completely insane is just us time traveling, and messing around. So
I've always thought time travel had a lot to do with this. The first thing I thought about when I heard about the Mandela effect was Back to the Future, and I mentioned that in the last interview, that that Doc kept telling Marty, hey, if you change even one little thing from the past, you're going to mess up the future, or you're going to have a ripple effect into the future. And like, his mom was ceasing to exist because she didn't meet the boyfriend and all this stuff. It's like, whoa, if these guys are time traveling and messing with even one little thing, it could change reality as we know it. And again, I'll be the first one to admit that none of this stuff is really that significant to where it changes our reality or changes what matters about our souls or what life is about. Like Forrest Gump never said life is like a box of chocolates. That's another one freaking everybody out. But does it matter if he said it or he didn't? It doesn't even change the fact that we're still human beings that need to treat each other with love and respect, and we should be about family and making a better world for the everybody around us. Those things aren't changing, but it's definitely a symptom that somebody's out there changing things. And I do think it is our responsibility to figure out what it is and to try to get to the bottom of it, even if it is ourselves in the future messing with us. I think we'd even be proud of ourselves in the future if we as humans with a limited understanding figured it out.
Yeah.
Sure.
So why don't you hit us with a couple of 2018 new ones?
Yeah, okay. Well, I just mentioned, like, Interview with the Vampire and Life is Like a Box of Chocolates. People can Google those ones. He never said Life is Like a Box of Chocolates. Interview with a Vampire, or Interview with the Vampire. Everyone's freaking out about that. But one of my favorite Mandela effects, and I've done a video about this in the past, but it didn't make it into my first book, is the movie Snow White. Now, when I was a child, that was probably my favorite movie growing up. I always wanted to be Snow White. I kind of looked like Snow White, so I was obsessed with Snow White. And the most iconic scene, again, in Snow White, it's always the most iconic scenes with these changes, which is so crazy, is when the Wicked Queen is looking into the mirror, and she's talking to the man in the mirror, and she says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest one of all?" And we all remember that, right? Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, if you check it out now, she no longer says mirror, mirror on the wall. She says magic mirror on the wall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've heard that. I don't buy that, but I've heard that.
Oh, yeah. And I have a video. You can check it out on my channel, actually, Rick.
No. I'm not saying that I don't believe what you're saying. I find it hard to believe because I do remember the old version.
Sure.
Oh, you remember mirror, mirror, you mean. Yeah, exactly. That's why I had to make a video. I downloaded the whole audio from the film and watched it again. In fact, I even had a copy of it that I downloaded on my computer. That's how much I love this film. And when I watched it back, it gave me the creeps. And, magic is nothing you want to mess with. And she's like, magic mirror. And she's got this whole different vibe about her. And she's really kind of doing like this spell almost. If you listen back the whole scene, she's kind of like calling upon some demons or some spell, and it's like, whoa. Now, how many times have we heard mirror, mirror used as a reference as well?
Right.
Well, that never happened. She was never even a mirror, mirror on the wall. So that really blew me away, and a lot of other people as well. So people can go check out Snow White and tell me
Yeah.
if
Now
it
Snow
says
White will
magic
give you
mirror.
nightmares.
Yeah, exactly. And now this one isn't necessarily 2018, this next one I'm going to tell you guys about, but it is definitely one that I forgot to talk about last time, and it is blowing the Mandela Effect community up. And it is about the Kennedy assassination. I don't know if you guys have heard about these ones yet.
Okay.
But Okay, now when President Kennedy was assassinated, I mean, that's, again, one of the probably biggest memories for like most of our parents and stuff like that growing up.
Right.
And so I had also done a lot of research into the Kennedy assassination. I've had a real big fascination with Marilyn Monroe for most of my life. I've read all of her biographies, and I plan to write a book about who actually killed Marilyn Monroe someday. So I had done a lot of research into these Kennedys and their connection to her and whatever. So I had watched the assassination many times. And what's really strange about the assassination when you watch it back today is there's a couple things that are coming up. And the first one is it's the car that they're driving. Now, most people remember when he was assassinated that he was in, a typical presidential car, which has like a driver in the front, a Secret Service agent, and then him and Jackie would be in the back.
Right.
But now when you check out this car, it's some model of a car that literally did not exist at this time, but it is actually a 6-seater car that is, I think it's actually like a Lincoln or something like that. I can't remember the exact model. Mm-hmm. But now there is a third row of seats that were added to this car. And when you look it up online, it just looks weird. So I hope your listeners will Google this and look at the car.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a second row added in the middle with like another windshield in front of it. And then there's 2 more people in the car. It's no longer just the driver and the Secret Service agent in the front. You got the driver, the Secret Service agent. You've got, I think it's the mayor or the Senator Connolly and his wife, like the mayor or senator of Texas, in the middle. And then you've got Jackie and John in the back. And that is freaking a lot of people out.
Yeah, it almost looks, it reminds me of, you know how when you add a leaf to a table to extend the table?
Yes.
Right,
It kind of looks like they added a leaf to the middle of the car and extended the car.
Right, it's like it's not supposed to be there originally. It's just all of a sudden it was just, like you said, added in there, like after the fact.
Right, and there was even this thing called the magic bullet theory, and there was a lot of people who did documentaries about this, where they thought the Secret Service agent he was the one that maybe shot John because he was on, John was behind the driver and this other guy was on the other side. So he was kind of at a diagonal to where if the Secret Service agent kind of turned back towards John with a gun under his arm, he could have been the one that took him out. But now the fact that we've got Mayor Connolly or Senator Connolly and his wife in the middle, there's no way the magic bullet theory ever could have been a real thing for the Secret Service agent in the front seat to turn around and somehow shoot through 2 people to hit John.
Right.
And there was
off the hook,
hundreds. Yeah, there was so many people saying, this is crazy. So now I had to just watch back this footage over and over again. So I start watching back the footage. And I am like looking at an assassination that I swear I have never seen before. The colors in this film are so bright, they look like they were filmed last week. Everything about the quality of the footage looks way too fresh and crisp. Then when you start watching the assassination moment, there's this whole section where Jackie Kennedy is grabbing something from behind the back of her seat. And it looks as though she now is actually the one that kills John. And I'm not kidding you. You can watch it back. You see her grab something behind herself. It looks as though she puts a gun almost underneath his chin. And then once his head blows off, she puts the thing back behind her seat. And then the famous scene where she goes running after his brains on the back of the car happens.
Right. That's what I was just getting ready to say is I remember, she was reaching for, his skull and everything once he, but this is a total different.
Oh man,
this is totally different from that. This is something additional that she went and grabbed for. That wow, that's something else, huh?
Now imagine if Jackie was actually the one that took him out. That puts everything on a whole new level. Do you know what I'm saying?
History completely, and so many other things as well.
Exactly. So I really want people to do some research into that because especially for those who have done research about this assassination, everybody knows about what's called the magic bullet theory. And it would have been impossible for that Secret Service agent to shoot John, if there was two people in the middle of the car and this extra row of seats and all this stuff. Like, it doesn't even make sense. And why would the governor or senator or whatever, mayor, even be in the car with the president? It just doesn't make sense.
Right.
You know, a president's driving around, you've got your driver and you got your Secret Service agent and your wife. You wouldn't have extra people in your car. You would probably have a car behind you if they wanted to feature this mayor or governor guy behind them, for sure. But it wouldn't make sense for them to all be in the same car in 1962 or 63 with this six-seater car that didn't exist. All of it is just very strange. So I really want people to do some research about that and watch that assassination back in slow motion, because I'm telling you, it really looks like Jackie killed him now.
That's huge. That's
check it out.
definitely, yeah, that's definitely one I'm going to be checking out, because that's a huge one. I mean, that's big.
Yeah.
Again, it changes all kinds of different things, you know, when you look at it like that.
And, you know, there was a lot of it goes back to my research about Marilyn Monroe, because Jackie Onassis knew that Marilyn was having an affair with John. And if she knew about it, you better believe she wanted to take him out. The Onassis family were not as good as people think.
Right.
So there's a whole other level now that opens up a million other doorways. So I'm like, whoa, you know, I don't know what that's about, but that one really, really, really freaked me out.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. I got a couple more here before we wrap up for today that are pretty good. There's another scene in The Wizard of Oz. There's a couple of Wizard of Oz scenes that are freaking people out. One of them is when the Wicked Witch of the East, or, is that the green one, the one that still lives? The Wicked Witch, anyway.
Right.
And she's got these flying monkeys in her castle, and the flying monkeys always go out and do her bidding for her. And there's this really famous scene where she's sending the flying monkeys out to go capture Judy, or go get Dorothy, and she says to them as they're flying out the window, "Fly, my pretties, fly." And we've all heard that saying used in other terms, like I've seen on The Simpsons and all kinds of things.
Right.
Well, "Fly, my pretties" is no longer in the movie. She does not say it as they're flying out the window. She doesn't even say fly. She just opens the window and the monkeys fly out. So "Fly, my little pretties" is gone, which is, everybody remembers that too.
She does, and it cracks me up because she doesn't even seem really that, like, I mean, that's more believable. She doesn't even seem that nice enough to even call her henchman, so to speak, pretty, so...
Yeah, exactly. and we know we've heard that one before, like, "Oh, my little pretties."
Right,
people have used this in other terms. So that's gone. And then there's also a scene, I think it's when the flying monkeys, like, come up to Dorothy and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, and they're kind of about to fight these guys back. And suddenly, you look at Scarecrow in this scene, and before it was like they just had kind of grabbed, like, some random things from the cornfield to fight back with, like a pitchfork or a shovel or something, because they were in this cornfield when they were getting attacked. And then now in the scene, Scarecrow is holding a gun. In fact, he's holding like a pistol.
Yeah.
And people are really freaking out about that, because they're like, wait, there wouldn't even have been a gun in a movie back then. They were like in this magical world. It wouldn't make sense that Oz would even have pistols.
Right.
So now the Wizard of Oz it's the Scarecrow was holding a gun in this scene where they're getting ready to fight back, and everyone's freaking out about that one.
Yeah, I have seen that, and I don't remember that at all, but I have seen the screenshots of that being the case, and that blows my mind.
And for a kid movie, like, come on, it doesn't make sense that they'd put that in there.
Right.
And let's see, a couple more good ones here. Okay, Smokey the Bear. You guys remember Smokey the Bear?
Yeah.
Okay, only you can prevent forest fires. Well, he's never been Smokey the Bear. Apparently, his name has always been just Smokey Bear. Just Smokey Bear.
Okay.
And he was never Smokey the Bear, which is making everybody laugh, because it's like, what is this bear? Like, does he smoke a lot or what? So he's just called Smokey Bear, was never called Smokey the Bear, so you can look everywhere, and that one's missing from our pop culture. But the other one here that I've got, and this is just too insane, is that we all remember Star Trek, and we all remember Captain Kirk.
Right.
And Captain Kirk, of course, had his most famous saying on Star Trek, and that was, "Beam me up, Scotty," right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we've all heard "Beam me up, Scotty" a million times. Well, people have now gone back and watched every Star Trek episode and gone through all of the old Star Trek episodes, and there is not a single episode that exists to this day anymore where he ever says, "Beam me up, Scotty."
No way. Wow.
"Beam me up, Scotty's" gone. There's even an interview with the Fonz. You remember Henry Winkler?
Yes.
Right.
And he's like in a room with Captain Kirk, and he's saying to him like, "Oh, something about beam me up, Scotty. That's your most famous line." And Captain Kirk literally looks at him and goes, "I've never said beam me up, Scotty. Why does everybody always say that to me?"
Oh, wow. So he even makes that reference. Like, okay.
Yes.
Well, that-
So William Shatner is literally going, "I never said that."
Wow.
That's it.
So
okay.
if somebody's in on it, it's probably William Shatner.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But he's even saying, and even the Fonz is going like, "What? I've heard you say that a million times. What are you talking about?" And I can't remember the exact video I saw, but there was some residue out there, and he's saying, "Nope, I never said it." So that's, another really big one that it's kind of like, come on. Now, it's like Rick said earlier. Did we all just totally misremember these movies, all the millions of people that have watched them over and over again in TV shows? Or is there something bigger going on?
Right.
Because, I mean, these are really iconic things that kind of, everybody remembers. Everybody can say, "Oh, even if I didn't watch Star Trek, I've heard Beam Me Up, Scotty." Or, even if I never saw Snow White, I know it's Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. Mm-hmm. Or, I never saw Forrest Gump, but everybody knows he said life is like a box of chocolates.
Yeah.
And so when these really big things change, it goes beyond just the fans who remember seeing it a million times and or even our own personal memories. It's like all of society gets a ripple effect and also hears these things from hearsay or people repeating things, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, and again, and there's so many more. I could go on and on and on, but these are some of the biggest ones that have kind of popped up that I thought most people would be able to relate to.
Well, Stasha, let me ask you a question, and this is going to be just an opinion on your end, but is there any way that you think that we could subjectively prove this phenomena? Is there a way that we can, so to speak, tie a string to something and hold on to it and say, look, this is the way it is, and we're going to watch this thing, whatever it might be, for years and see if it changes? Is that even possible given the context of what we're talking about?
And well, I hope that it is. And that is why I started to write this book, or the first book that I wrote about the Mandela effect. All the people that really do research on the Mandela effect, to be honest, or the majority of them, they're kind of just doing this stuff online. They're posting a lot of YouTube videos. Like, I know some guys who are amazing researchers, and they have like 500 or 600 videos on the Mandela effect, but it's just all videos. And then you've got Fiona Broome, the lady who started the term, but she doesn't write books. She just has a blog. And so everybody was just kind of going around with like blog posts and YouTube videos and all this stuff, trying to get down, this proof. And anybody can pull the internet down. And that's kind of what freaked me out and concerned me a little bit. And I thought, you know what? The best thing we could possibly do is for me to sit down and collect all of the memories that people are having of their before and thereafter and get it into black and white, ink on piece of paper in a paperback book that people can hold. Because I know that even physical things have been manipulated by the effect, but this could have been something that happened, like we said, maybe in 2012, and maybe we're just seeing the symptoms now, but maybe there's not the possibility for things to keep changing. So I thought if I recorded everything down and kept really good notes in alphabetical order and research of this stuff, then that's the best way to kind of keep an eye on it, is just to get it down on paper, because I don't know how else to prove it besides collecting evidence.
Well,
collecting the evidence is half the work, really.
Well, that's right, and that's why I asked if it was even possible, because you can do that, and then given the context of what we're talking about, who's to say that your book wouldn't change? Do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly, and that's what's kind of scary about it too. It's just that it feels like a little bit safer than just having stuff online, but it is really hard. How can we prove memories? That's what's so difficult about this, because it really comes down, to, science in a way and memories. And I mean, there is like neurological studies and different things that people could do. The next 2 years of my degree, I'm actually focusing on psychology. I finished my 2 years of religion, and now I'm going on to psychology, and I know we'll be dealing a lot with like cognitive behaviors and stuff like that. So I hope moving forward, I could possibly figure out a way that we could test people's memories, because the memories may be the key here to the proof. Right. If we could get enough memories that they're able to map or do a brain scan or whatever, there's so much high-tech stuff out there now. Could we possibly prove it just by proving that these people's memories are what they say they are? Because anyone could say, I remember it this way, but how can you prove a memory?
Right.
So that's the only way I think it could be done, is possibly through some type of cognitive brain scan or something.
Right.
Yeah.
One question that I have, going back to discuss, like, for example, like Beam Me Up Scotty, as an example. Have you ever found in your research that let's say you have an example of a movie where people think that a saying or something happens in a movie, and it's come to find out, it's not like that. But let's say that it's a movie that may be based off of a book, and people, obviously when you go and you read a book and then you see a movie after that, a book is a little bit more in detail, and people paint their own picture in their minds reading a book than compared, obviously, visually before we see a movie, to where that could be an example as to where some of these thoughts or things come from, to where somebody may read something first, then see a movie, and then kind of maybe get the two things mixed up.
Confused. Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think that's another layer to this as well, is that it could be a twofold thing. Like you read the book and then you see the movie, and the book has one way, but the movie has it another. Right. That's very possible too, but I've just found that most of the people that are kind of saying they have the Mandela effect, they're people that really haven't gone so deep into the research. It's more like you kind of just catch people off guard and say, hey, what did Captain Kirk say? And it just comes right off the top of their head. So I try to go more based on just what are people's initial reaction and their first knee-jerk response, because that's kind of like, what sticks with you. But it could be a twofold thing. You're absolutely right, where, like, okay, the book says it like this, but the movie says it like that. So there's a lot of gray areas involved around that, too. I've had a lot of people kind of say that same thing to me.
Oh, okay.
It'd be interesting, and again, this is kind of like trying to prove a subjective fact with another subjective type of thing. But it would be interesting to look into and see if, and we work with a lady by the name of Jean Durkin. She's a medium, psychic medium. Have you ever heard of anyone doing psychic medium work that's looked into the Mandela effect? And basically my point is to ask someone on the other side, or a spirit, or something of those along those lines, with a broader, wide-ranging perspective than someone here on Earth, to say, what is going on here? Do you know what's going on here? Now, again, you have to believe that person is truly getting a legitimate response. So that's, like I said, you have to believe in not only the Mandela effect, but also the medium effect. Right. So I understand that's a very, very subjective thing, but it's an interesting way to go about it. Would you agree?
Yeah, what people don't actually know is that I am a psychic. I started as a psychic. I worked as a psychic for many years before I got into the religious side of things. And I still to this day do psychic readings on my website, but I just call them spiritual guidance instead, because the psychic word it has a lot of bad stuff attached to it.
Sure.
But I have basically myself have really strong abilities, and I am also a medium as well. And I have kind of done this due diligence that you're talking about, and I have tapped in and kind of asked the universe, what this is. And to be honest, the response that I received, and again, I don't really do psychic videos anymore, and the more you get into religion, it's really hard to work on this line of I'm a psychic and I'm a religious scholar. People look at you like you're crazy. You know, how can you be both? But I consider psychic abilities to be, supernatural and divine in nature, like coming from God. I don't think they're psychic at all. I think everybody has it. You just have to tap into that antenna. Mm-hmm. But what I received back, and this is absolutely, and I haven't even actually shared this, but what I received back when I went into deep meditation about what really was going on here is that I received that this had absolutely something to do with AI, artificial intelligence. And that if artificial intelligence have as much control over us as, or they have way more control over us than we realize, is kind of what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And I believe that AI have found a way to infiltrate into our existence, into our into reality as we know it. I think the way they're able to do it, to be honest, is through Wi-Fi, which we're using right now. Mm-hmm. And which everybody is using all the time. It's kind of like Wi-Fi has become a cloud for all information, for people's human emotions. We're using our smartphones to talk to people on Messenger, Facebook, all these things. So the AI is essentially learning from us 24 hours a day. And I also believe that they're trying to mimic and copy us. And again, back to my theory in the beginning that we might be avatars. I am strongly believing that AI has almost everything to do with this Mandela effect, and it has something to do with them essentially kind of copying us or wanting to be like us. And that can get biblical too. You can get real biblical on that same aspect. You know, the fallen angels being sent away from humanity, them wanting to be like us, them not being allowed to be on earth, so they have to find a way to get through to us. So they go through psychics, they go through channelers, they go through mediums, et cetera, et cetera. And now they can be affecting us through Wi-Fi, I think.
Wow, yeah.
So this truly is a red pill, blue pill situation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you see, it's a very hard thing for me to even explain. But if you start looking into AI, it is connected to parallel realities. It is connected to all these different things because, you know, where is the consciousness of this AI actually coming from?
Right, right.
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I know AI has a big hand in this. How it all is unfolding, I don't know that even I, as the strongest psychic or even the strongest psychic in the world, is supposed to know exactly what's about to happen or what's going on. And I think that we could be partially a little protected for our own sake. Mm-hmm. But there is something very technological and digital going on with everything to do with the Mandela effect, and I'm 100% convinced of that now that I've done research for 2 years now.
Wow. Very interesting. Well, yeah. I want to thank you for coming on with us again tonight. Is there a way that our listeners can reach out to you or to get your anything you put out there, your videos, your books, things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a landing pad for everything I do, and that is my website, and it's StashaEriksen.com, and that's StashaEriksen.com. And I've got a lot of services on there. Like I said, I do psychic readings, I do house blessings, curse removals, all these other services for people. But I also have a tab on my site that is all about my books. And I have books on animal communication, psychic abilities, MK Ultra, all this type of stuff. And also on my books tab right now, besides the Mandela Effect book, I have a GoFundMe project, a campaign I've been running for about a year now. And this first book about the Mandela Effect was actually self-funded and self-published by myself and all of the Mandela Effect community because everybody was so excited that someone was finally going to write a book on this topic.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, so it was actually about $1,000 that it takes for me to self-publish one book, and I had $1,000 in donations that helped me create the Mandela Effect book, Volume 1. So I still have that campaign going right now, and right now I'm getting ready to start the Mandela Effect Volume 2 because I could not fit all of the information into one book. Like the first book's 350 pages, and it's barely tipping the iceberg.
Right.
So I'm really trying to get some people to come over, and if they're interested in the effect, to give a donation, even if it's like $1 $5, whatever. And I'm hoping to release the Mandela Effect Volume 2 possibly by this summer. I released the last one July of 2017, so I'm hoping maybe to release Volume 2 July of 2018. So if people want to come over and support me that way, that is amazing. I have Patreon and YouTube and all kinds of stuff on there, but that's really the best way to find me. And you can get the book now on Amazon.com, and it's called The Mandela Effect, Everything is Changing by Stasha Eriksen. I think it's still like number 10 in quantum theory to this day.
Oh, wow.
Really? Nice.
Yeah, it's doing pretty good. And that's mostly also the X-Files just covered this as well. Their second to last episode, season 11, episode 4, is all about the Mandela effect, and that just came out a few weeks ago. And so even the X-Files are now bringing attention to this phenomenon. So I hope soon it'll be worldwide.
Right.
But will that episode still exist a week from now?
Yeah. Oh,
We'll
the
have to
X-Files
see.
did a Mandela effect. No, they did not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was a good one, Rick.
All right, well, Stasha, again, I want to thank you for coming on with us. And if you get your book published over the summer, I'd absolutely love to have you back on again and talk about, the further adventures of this topic, because
absolutely.
It's something that we could go on for literally for hours here and talk about this.
Oh, I know. Literally, I had like a list that just kept going, and I thought, you know what, I'll be talking all day. So you see how much this is changing and affecting humanity bit by bit, little by little. And, a lot of people might listen to this show and only resonate with one or two things I said, and that's okay. It's all about just getting our memories down and seeing what we recall. And I'm going to keep continuing to record all of this data into books and just keep going until we get to the bottom of this. I just want answers. I don't want credit for this effect. I don't want to make money off it. I just want answers. And I think that as humanity, we deserve to have answers and find out what is really going on here.
Absolutely.
All right. Absolutely. Well, again, I want to thank you for coming on, and you have a good day. You're up in Norway there. It's late in the day there where you're at, right?
It's 5 p.m. in Norway, and the sun is, gone already, and it's about 20 below. We got snow everywhere,
20
so
below.
Wow.
Yeah.
We haven't even hit lunchtime yet, so.
Oh man. Well, we can swap someday.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you keep warm up there, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes,
Thanks, guys.
Stasha.
Thank you, Doug and Rick. It was lovely talking to you guys again, and I hope to be back again soon.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
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 All right, we're back here on Paradelphia, and that was our interview with Miss Stasha Eriksen about the Mandela effect. Mm-hmm. Some interesting stuff.
And it's and just like we said there towards the end, I feel like every time, no matter how long an interview goes or how much we talk about it, we don't even get into fully of everything. I mean, it's literally a topic we could just go on years.
Yeah, this is one of those things we could do like 5 shows in a row.
I mean, you probably turn it into an entire series of shows or a show specifically for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, if anybody wants to follow up, her website is Stasha Eriksen, StashaEriksen.com, and you can also look her book up on Amazon. The name of the book is The Mandela Effect. Everything is Changing, and obviously you can search by her name as well. Mm-hmm. So, quite interesting, and we thank her again for taking the time out to come on.